Welcome everyone to a very special first episode of our brand new Resident Evil series, Recollection of Evil. Now, Resident Evil is a fan favorite series here at Final Weapon. We've got a lot of massive fans of Capcom's great series, and honestly today, what better way to kick off Recollection of Evil than to dive into the latest Resident Evil game, Resident Evil Requiem. So today we sit here 2 weeks after launch. We have had lots of hands-on time with the game, and today I'm joined by Saras and Dante, and we're just going to be diving into Requiem, what we loved about it, the things that we found interesting, the things we didn't like, and just our overall thoughts on the game. But Dante, you want to kick us off and start diving into what you thought of Requiem?
Scared. That is the first thing I will say. No, I really liked it. It was a very, very, very good experience. I played this with my girlfriend, and the entire time she was going to be the one playing the game mostly, and I was going to be watching. But after the first encounter with the girl, that one cutscene that plays, where you see the girl's head kind of poke out from the side of the screen, and then it cuts to just the face right in your point of view. She handed me the controller back very quickly and said, "I'm not doing this. This is like, you play this. This is your thing." And I went, "Okay, I'll do it." But no, I thought it was really good. I know that I've seen a couple people say that the beginning was a little bit too slow, just with everything with the Redwood Hotel, but I honestly thought that it was a really good setup for what was to come, and especially as a lead up to what happens at Rhodes Hill. And my gosh, I can't think of any, as much as I love Resident Evil 7 and 8, Rhodes Hill just felt like such a good evolution of just what felt like the modern interpretation of the classic Resident Evil formula of just giving you a place, sort of Metroidvania-esque, keys for doors, exploring around, finding routes, and kind of planning out what you need to do next, and conserving your ammunition and everything. It was so well done, and especially with Grace as a main character as well, it felt really, really fitting for her. She felt very believable. Afterwards, the stuff with Leon, of course, returning, it was very, very fun to see everything. And my God, that man at the ripe age of 51 years old sure can move, can he?
It's hard to believe, to be honest.
Yeah, he definitely can. And so just all the stuff with Leon and everything, it felt so fun to be able to go through it all. And it provided a very good breath of fresh air, I guess, from when things feel very, very suffocating with Grace. You kind of get that leeway of playing as Leon, where you get that Resident Evil 4, 5, 6 action kind of power fantasy, where you just get to deck zombies, kick them in the face, and just completely go to town on them. And all the stuff with the parrying with the axe and everything was, I thought, was a really fun addition, and felt like a really good growth of what we had in the Resident Evil 7 remake with the knife. Of course, going back to Raccoon City was amazing. All the stuff afterwards was at Ark was amazing. Just the story goes to places that was so crazy. But overall, I would say it was good, very good. What do you guys think about it? Saras, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I have played quite a few Resident Evil games before this, but this was probably one of my new favorites in the series. I played the entire game on Switch 2, and I adored it. It was definitely a unforgettable experience. As Dante, you said, I mean, there are a lot of parts that made me jump. That scene that you mentioned is definitely one of them, and a few others throughout Raccoon City also really got me. But yeah, I loved it. I loved the narrative. I loved the way Grace was handled and Leon was handled. And overall, just the structure of the story was really well done. I obviously had issues. I think some of the pacing was a little off. The balance between Grace and Leon could have been done better. and a few moments here and there just didn't quite click with me in terms of the narrative. But even still, these are small problems in the grand scheme of things. This is a really fun game, and even at its worst, it's still really, really like exciting to play, whether you're playing as Leon or Grace. And yeah, I think I think this is a really great step for Resident Evil, and I am more than happy to see where it goes from here.
No, that's great to hear from both you, Saras and Dante. And no, I mean I agree. I had pretty insane expectations. I don't even know if Capcom could have ever met them for what I was expecting for Requiem. I don't think it quite lived up to my insane expectations, but it's a great game. I think really the true evolution, it felt like that everything from Resident Evil 7, and especially Resident Evil 2 Remake, has been building towards this game. And just everything here, all the lessons learned along the way. I love the call out, Dante, of the axe stuff. Like, yes, that was awesome. And just being able to sharpen. There's a clip I saw yesterday of Leon kicking a zombie down, and the zombie's on its knees stunned, and the axe needs to be sharpened, and so he sharpens it in front of the zombie while the zombie's stunned, and it's like, oh my god, it's just funny. I mean, there's so much there with the combat for Leon that's a lot of fun. I really loved Grace. I was honestly personally pretty happy to see that her character arc was like pretty self-contained and wrapped up. I appreciate that, and it didn't feel like that Capcom is like, oh, stay tuned for Grace's next episode. Like, it was more like, this is Grace's character arc. This is her story. Could she come back in the future? Absolutely. But I was really happy with what was delivered here. In terms of the environments, the care center is one of the best. It is one of the best environments that Capcom's done in Resident Evil. I absolutely loved it. It had that classic Resident Evil feeling with all kinds of new elements too. I really loved how, switching between Grace and Leon, there was, you always were struggling to find something, whether it be heals or ammo. There was a scarcity, artificial, of course, and purposeful, but there was a scarcity in resources that really made you have to be careful about what you choose to do. I know whenever I was in Raccoon City going to lower the two bridges for that construction platform, I was really low on heals and ammo as Leon, and so I had to be really careful and figure out how I was going to approach that situation. And it's moments like that that I really remember and I love about Requiem. I definitely have some issues with the game here and there. I think that the nature of this game switching back and forth is kind of a fault to a certain point, but I think that the overall product is just something most people, I think it's impossible to not have fun with this game. I really do. Most people are gonna love it, and I'm really happy for that. It's crazy how popular and major that this game has been. I mean, 5 million copies sold in not even a week. It's exploding and breaking Resident Evil records left and right, and I'm very excited to see what lies ahead for the series with DLC and, of course, future Resident Evil games as Capcom just continues to churn them out. But I think really for that, and with that being said, I think it's probably best for us to kind of dive in and just kind of talk about the game section by section. So I think the Renwood Hotel, that opening prologue with the photorealistic streets and the flickering lights, the people rushing past you. What did you guys think about that section? I was really just wowed and stunned. I played this on, for me personally, I love that Resident Evil is now available on the Switch. I picked up a copy of that. It's been really fun so far for Requiem, but I'm always I got to play this on the TV, put this on my OLED. Like, I want to see this in the best visual fidelity possible. And this thing looked gorgeous on my PlayStation 5, even on the base. And I was taken aback really by the Renwood Hotel in this opening segment. The tension was there, the visuals were there, and it was just a perfect entry to atmosphere and setting up the story overall.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all those things. I first played it on my computer for a little bit, and I just have a 1440p display and everything. And I definitely agree with you in the fact that the game looks absolutely phenomenal in the sense of these look like very lived in locations, and the thing that completely amazed me, and this is just the power of the RE engine, is just that we're able to get such good performance out of such great fidelity. And when I was playing it through, I was hitting like 100 frames consistently. When it dipped down to 90 frames, which is absolutely incredible for a game to come out nowadays, where some engines really struggle with being able to maintain both good frame rates and graphical fidelity. But the Redwood Hotel just felt like it felt like something you'd see out of like something out of Seven. Have you seen the movie Seven? Yes, and there's that really great scene where they're running through trying to catch John Doe, and it felt so much like that, where there's that build up to trying to find out what is there with the assignment that Grace is given by the FBI, and then where there's a chase in Seven. In the game, we get that confrontation that she has with not only the zombie, but with the first time we get to meet Victor Gideon, which is, I love that man so much. He is just so like smarmy sounding. Whoever did the performance for him did an amazing job, and it just felt like such a good lead up to what would eventually go into Rose Hill. Did you guys enjoy the performances in the game?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I mean, I think my favorites were... I think Grace's voice actress absolutely deserves every single award this year. She did so well, and obviously Leon has been nailing it ever since, RE2. Nick has been doing a fantastic job since then. And, even the little performances, obviously Victor Gideon did a great job. Like, we'll get into him more later, but he was an underrated favorite of mine in this game. He, plays that smarmy, mad scientist figure really well. He's got a very Igor Frankenstein vibe to him, which you'll never hear me say is a bad thing. But in terms of even before that, just approaching the Renwood Hotel, even on Switch 2, it looked gorgeous, right? I mean, it's still... Not only did I play it on the console, I played it all on handheld as well, and it still looked great. There are little issues here and there with the hair, but these were small in the grand scheme of things. And I think, whether you're playing in third person as Grace or first person, you're gonna really get a treat from the environment. And yeah, it was so unnerving, that first part. I completely agree with that 7 comparison. There's this weird calm before the storm vibe as you pace towards the Renwood Hotel. I'll be honest, I got so paranoid when the guy with the trench coat bumped into Grace. I thought he was going to be important somehow later. I thought he was Victor Gideon. I don't even know how. But yeah, that was a fun sequence. And then, of course, as the terror ramps up, we find out Grace is being stalked. And man, that first zombie encounter was perfect. That felt right out of the classic Resident Evil games, where we see the full turn, we get the very tense chase sequence, we realize Grace is very in over her head, she is no Chris Redfield or a member of STARS, she's barely even Ethan, she has no idea what she's doing, she's just fumbling her way through every encounter. And it made her so much more charming, and those first encounters even more unnerving.
Yeah, no, agreed. I love the shout out on performances. I back up what y'all said 100%. Nick Apostolidis and his range for Leon over 2, 4, and now 9 has been incredible. I've really loved watching Leon's progression as a character, and obviously I feel Nick does such a good job reflecting his growth, especially throughout the game. You hear even with his, lower range, being older now, he still conveys a lot of emotion through what he says. And I love his snarkiness, just the classic one-liners, think I want a second opinion, stuff like that is just great. Angela as Grace, absolutely amazing performance. I was reading, and she had an interview where she talked about how so much of the mocap that they did was actually done like in the dark to actually simulate the fear. And I love when Grace talks, she stumbles her words, she's mumbling, like you can just see it on the facial animations, you can hear it in her voice. Like it's very unique to have a character in RE like this that has like no, should not be in the situation that she's in, right? Like we're so used to seeing, Leon Kennedy come in, or we're seeing Jill, or we're seeing, these characters that have some kind of expertise or background in dealing with, situations. And it was very fascinating to watch Grace kind of have to be thrown in this situation and just figure it out. And I love the call out on Gideon. Gideon was an amazing actor. Really big shout out to his performance. Absolutely. There's a really funny scene towards the midpoint of the game where he just like laughs and has this insane range of emotion, and it just immediately shuts off and he just walks out the door. And it's like, oh my gosh, like this dude is so methodical. The conversations he had with Grace, especially that one where he like yells her name and runs out the room. I mean, it really gets you on your toes because you're like, oh man, like I don't know what this guy is capable of or what to expect. But yeah, he was great. Renwood, I totally agree. I love that zombie encounter. Like especially with this one, the zombie, it really transformed fast in front of your eyes, and it was that police officer that helped you out earlier, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what is going on here? Whoa. And you're trying to move the cart fast enough, trying to dodge out of the way of the pokes, and the tension's there, man. That's what I want from Resident Evil, is the tension. Get me to actually feel that, like, oh my gosh, man, I gotta go, or I gotta do this. And I feel like this game did such a great job of creating that, even in Leon's sections. Especially like the sequence a little later on, but there's a sequence where you got to shoot glass out from the bottom of enemies' feet in the building, suspended in the air, and you're like trying so hard not to shoot at the wrong one because then you won't be able to make it to the other side, or like you'll blow up the entire floor. So there's just so many great moments of tension here. But I agree, the Renwood Hotel was really great, and I think obviously diving into the next section that follows that is really the one that really starts to cement Resident Evil Requiem as its own game, which is the care center.
Yeah, that care center is just such a phenomenal area, and really stands out as the highlight of this game, which is crazy to think because we end up going to Raccoon City later. But it just feels like classic Resident Evil. And there's, as much as we can love and appreciate games like 7 and 8, or even more action-centered ones like 4 and 5, there's just something about that being in a central area, just one building, and having each room have a significance to it, a weight to it, that makes going through the Road Hill Center just so just intrinsically fun. And there's just, man, it's hard to describe, because it's just so, it's something that's so uniquely Resident Evil that you can't get anywhere else,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? Even when they were first showing the care center in the early trailers for Requiem, there were such heavy Arclay Mansion vibes. It was everything I wanted and more from that area and that section. And this is where the balance between Leon and Grace really starts to shine. We got a tease of that right after the Renwood Hotel, when Leon is running through the streets fighting Gideon's range of zombies, which was such a fun encounter. It's where you really get a sense of, like, Leon is not the same Leon as Resident Evil 4, and certainly not the same as Resident Evil 2. He's more gritty and grounded, but he is more capable of doing damage than ever before. And that first section with Grace, where she's suspended upside down, that was terrifying. I completely agree with you, Dante. That moment where the girl, as we find out, that big monster first peeks in, made me jump so high. Like, that was a terrifying section. And, even when you run to the safe room, that, like, you're not really safe. I'm curious, did you guys jump when you saw that horse statue in the hallway? Because when I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is a monster. Like, that was awful. I had to pace closer to realize, oh, thank God, it's just a statue. Like, that was not a fun scare.
I didn't think that it was a monster, but I tell you what I did think was gonna happen. I thought of, like, for sure, as soon as you turn on the lights and you saw that horse, I looked at it and I was like, something is gonna pop out of there. Something is gonna break through that statue and pop out and chase you in the hall, and you're gonna have to try and find cover somewhere. And I was like, I'm so confident on this. I am willing to bet money that this something is gonna happen, and it never did, and I looked like a fool.
Yeah, thank goodness you didn't actually bet money on that. But yeah, that was a fun section. And of course, when we get that transition to Leon and his first encounter in the hospital, where, oh my gosh, man, the chainsaw stuff was so cool. We saw a little bit of that in the first trailers, but not only do you get to control the chainsaw, the way the zombies wield it is so goofy. They cut off their own arms. It, like, I at one point, I think I shot one in the leg, the chainsaw zombie, and it just started dragging itself across the floor. It was terrifying. With the way the chainsaw just kept spinning and cutting my legs, that was really fun.
I'm curious, Dante, what was your favorite part of the care center? Because there's so much. I mean, I guess I will say before passing it off, like, I think my favorite part of this really was the fact that all the zombies had, kept their personalities or tasks of the previous life. The singer zombies, I'm just blasting those with Requiem bullets. But I thought it was so interesting and so unique for the franchise to kind of see zombies throughout these different environments that were kind of like cleaning or doing what they were doing before they turned into zombies.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the best parts in my eyes about just the care center is that it felt like the enemies inside of it, the zombies that you see, they all had a almost like an emotional weight to them. They felt like people, and I'm not too sure. I'll have to think back on this and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first Resident Evil game where you really get to hear the zombies have some sort of just a small smidge of their humanity still within them. Them saying things like, I'm pretty sure one of the zombies said something like "kill me now" or something like that as you go by. The zombie that's in the bathroom that's just constantly scrubbing the blood on the walls, going, clean. I need to clean this. This isn't clean. Or the zombies that are sensitive to noise, and they come by, and if you do something loud, they start going, shut up, shut up. They start yelling and screaming. And I would say my favorite interaction, and it feels like such a small thing, but it felt so like cool to be able to do something like this, is when you're going through the West Wing and you go to the second floor and you meet the zombie that is fiddling with the light switch, and knowing, like, going around and seeing it, trying to turn it off and on again, and fiddling with it, and then realizing that it has an attraction to light, and going through and trying to find the other light switches to bring it away. It felt super cool. Not only that, a zombie has that sort of interaction with the environment, but also that you can kind of get past it and use it in sort of like a puzzle-ish way, where you can lead it to another area to either act as a cover for you to get past someplace else, or even just to get by the area without having to kill the zombie. Yeah, I have to ask, what are your guys' personal favorite zombies that were there? Just because there's so many of them that have individual personalities.
Oh man, I think my favorite was, so I actually I think it's a tie, because there's one that I thought like had a really fun personality, and then there was one zombie encounter that the implications were absolutely terrifying, and one that I'll never forget. Obviously, I think my favorite just fun zombie was the singers, especially the one in that little like lounge area where the piano is, just the way she screeches at you, and how that staggers you, and I had to like keep adjusting and adapting my play style. I was desperate. Like, I think I took her out very early on, leaving Leon with nothing to do later, which is really funny. But in terms of the one that really startled me the most, There's one in the office where you see this man like towering over this woman, like choking her, and they're both zombies. And because we now know like the zombies were repeating what they did in a past life or right before they turn, the fact that he was still choking her to the point that she was dead even after she became a zombie is terrifying, and it makes me wonder what was really happening as he was berating her and saying like calling her a screw up or things like that. Like that was one that really got me under my skin too.
I completely forgot about that zombie, and now that you mention it, that is absolutely horrifying. And in just the environmental storytelling of that is phenomenal. Just that is awful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will say I do think my favorite zombie, which maybe this is humorous to some out here, my favorite zombie I have to say I think was Chunk. And the reason for that is I did not know that his name was Chunk or anything. And I was playing this and I happened to be I was talking to a friend and I pick up the bracelet and you just hear and I was like, bruh, what did I just do? And you pick it up the second you exit the menu, you just see this giant behemoth start rushing. And I'm like, oh my god, the chunkiest zombie I've ever seen in my life just started charging at me. And I'm running away. And those two annoying zombies on the stairs, man. Oh my gosh, those are the worst. I had to reload my saves so many times because I was trying not to waste so much ammo on them. And I'm going up there. But oh my gosh, that Chunk is just the funniest dude. I found out online that if you know the zombie with the pole that doesn't like the noise, if he hits Chunk once, it's a one-shot kill. I was like blown away by that.
It's a one shot kill with any zombie he's led towards. Doesn't matter if it's the chef or the singer. It's like if you throw a glass bottle at one of those zombies, the guy upset like the janitor will kill them instantly. I saw one other picture of like a screenshot of the him wandering into the central hub of the care center, and it's just a caption saying you're not supposed to be here. He has that kind of oh man, what were the monsters from Resident Evil 4 called? The ones that couldn't see. I think they were called Ganados, right?
The ones that couldn't
Oh,
see.
Yeah,
oh gosh.
I'm trying to think because in RE4 like the
The
Ganado
main
are just the
enemies were the
general enemies. I
Ganados.
think
Yeah.
you're thinking of the Garador.
yes, yeah, the ones that had like the stitched up mouths and like the big helmet over their
claws.
face. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of those, but somehow more absurd. Um, and then, of course, there's like all the blister heads you encounter, which was a great callback to the Crimson Heads and that whole mechanic. I just remember being super paranoid every time they'd get up and having to manage my resources and making sure I always had a Requiem bullet on hand to take them out. They move fast, they're brutal. I mean, they were not fun to fight, especially like they can corner you and ugh, that was not enjoyable, but it was miserable in all the right ways, I'd say those encounters.
Yeah, speaking of Requiem bullets, I have another question, which is when you were going through Rhodes Hill, were you more on the side of using Requiem bullets or did you use a lot of hemolytic injectors?
Oh, I use the injectors. I made sure to hoard those as much as possible. Um, Again, it got to the point where I gave Leon nothing to do because all the zombies were already dead. The second pistol Grace can get is really overpowered. The one next behind the bar. So all I needed was that and the hemolytic injector, and I was set. Um, I'm curious, Noah, was it the same for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I mainly used Requiem bullets for like the big enemies. So Chef got Requiemed, Chunk got Requiemed. I'm trying to think. I used Requiem bullets where needed for sure. I definitely leverage with Grace though, handgun ammo and sneaking around. Hemolytic injectors, I used a few of them. I will say, those suckers came in real handy when I had a blister, like a zombie about to turn into a blister head on the floor, and I'm like, no, and I just spam R2 and get the hemolytic injector in there, and that was nice. But I will say, I love bringing that up, Dante. I love the fact that all of us had very different playthroughs of the same game because there's so many different mechanics and ways to go about playing. Like, I definitely think almost everyone that played this game probably had a different strategy of when to use the Requiem bullets. I saw people on TikTok live using Requiem bullets on like the standard zombies, and I was laughing about that. It is what it is with how people decide to use these resources. But I will say I definitely was getting really frustrated in Grace's section because I felt like I could not find, you find that locked drawer right next to the model of the care center. And I was like, okay, there's going to be something super valuable there. And I'm waiting to find a lockpick. And then I finally do, and there's Requiem ammo in there. And I'm like, dang. But I will tell you happily, I walked in to that lounge area and I saw that singer in the dress, and I was like, yeah, no, sorry, I don't know who you are, but you look like you're a mini boss. And I shot her dead. The first thing, she didn't even get to sing, so I didn't even know. And then the second one in the office, yeah, I shot her dead too. That was horrible. I actually lured those zombies out with a Molotov. I chucked it on the ground. I let them die and burn out, and then I just came over there and just pew with the Requiem. It was awesome.
Yeah, out of context, that sounds absolutely psychotic, but I can safely say I related to that as well. I tried to go for I felt like I was playing a first-person shooter at some points, even while Grace. I was just like trying to get a kill streak, trying to hit 3 enemies with one shot of the Requiem, which was really funny. But yeah, that was a fun encounter. But obviously, we've been talking a lot about gameplay throughout the Rhodes Care Center, and it's a really great aspect when it comes to gameplay. I think that's why that section shines, because you can almost approach it like an immersive sim, like a Deus Ex or a Dishonored, where each time you replay it will be completely different. I'm very excited to replay it and try to go for that infinite ammo upgrade. But we've been kind of neglecting the story so far. Obviously, when we switch to Grace, we get that first meeting between Grace and Leon, which was really fun. Leon gets captured and we're fully in Grace's mindset. But then we see Emily, and she's kind of a really interesting character in the grand scheme of things. Someone that Grace can imprint on and see as a younger sister, even a daughter of sorts. Obviously, we didn't mention it, but Grace being connected to Alyssa Ashcroft from the series, who gets executed in one of the most brutal fashions possible right at the beginning of the game. And man, again, Angela's acting in that part. Honestly, I thought her mom genuinely died in that scene. Like, that was a real scream. But yeah, seeing Emily was very cute, and I really enjoyed that puzzle section where you get to guide her to the Braille puzzle.
Yeah, 100% when going through the Rhodes Hill, it really did feel like that's where the Resident Evil 2-ness of the game came through, especially with thinking back to the encounter that Grace has with Leon the first time, how there's a gate separating the two, kind of like how there's that gate separating Leon and Claire in the RE2 remake.
Very true.
Just the interactions with Emily as well felt a lot like your interactions that you end up having with Sherry in that game, and just having to protect her and bring her to places and making sure that she's okay. And 100% I agree with you in the sense that as soon as Grace laid her eyes on Emily, it did feel like there was a familial bond there, and there was some sort of connection. And it really comes to prove that Grace does have that very, very warm side of her that more hardened people like Chris, for example, didn't really have. Going back to RE8, how Chris didn't really have too much warmth in regards to Ethan, and the whole thing of taking Rose away and everything, just kicking off the whole story of the game. And it's just the interactions between the two are very, very sweet.
Definitely. No, I really liked seeing that story. I will say, I was at the very end whenever, we get to that final piece and they're like, oh my gosh, like we see the Braille, and it was like, oh, like it looks like that there's some kind of indentation on the thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I knew exactly what I had to do, and bring Emily over. But no, it was really nice to see that story unfold. And yeah, no, I definitely was a fan of that. I love the call out of, Grace's warm side. Chris, definitely not.
No.
Definitely not. So it was good to see. It's a good kind of, reintroduction and new face to that for the series. But I want to transition because, obviously, yes, the care center is this huge ordeal. There's a lot to talk about there, even beyond what we've talked about just now. But the second section of the game is kind of the one that Capcom did, was building up the marketing for. Like, this was Raccoon City: The Return. We hadn't been back here since the events of the incident. This was supposed to be kind of the grand return to, the iconic location for most people that started their journey with Resident Evil. So it was very, obviously, really exciting to go back. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think about Raccoon City as a whole.
Dante, take it away.
Well, oh, geez. I'd say there's two parts to Raccoon City that I think people should look at, and one is definitely the story aspect of it, and the other is the gameplay aspect. The story aspect of Raccoon City, I really really liked because I'm so jaded by years and years of people, putting out what is essentially just nostalgia slop of going, hey, you remember this thing? Look at this thing. We're bringing it back. We're bringing it back. And it's sort of going, oh, geez, well, they've really sort of lost what they need to do, so they're looking for a quick sort of thing to get people on board with whatever they're doing. But going back to Raccoon City felt very, very... It felt like it added up. It made sense just in regards to the story and also the themes of just regrets and self-doubt that is within the series, represented by Grace with what happens with Emily and her wanting to protect her and not being able to as we go through it, but Leon kind of going through the motions of returning back to Raccoon City and looking around and looking at all the buildings and people, the remnants of people that lived there, and going, I couldn't save them. Like, I tried my best, and these people died because of an incident that, if people knew about, if people had blown the whistle on it, it could have stopped. All these people could have lived. So 100% in terms of story, Raccoon City is great. The set pieces that they have in there, like going back to the RPD, is great. Seeing all this stuff, but the gameplay of it is where I start to have a little bit of a problem, just because the section where you're trying to find the different parts of the detonator. What did you guys think about that?
Oh man, I mean, that was where the pacing really slowed to a crawl. I still really enjoyed it. I think the overall fun factor of it was still there, but running back and forth was just not fun. I think, this is proof that I've seen some people discuss the idea of an open world Resident Evil game. I think this is fundamental proof that should never ever happen. And that's not to say it was bad, right? I really liked the high rise stuff. At the top of the building, that was great fun. Again, the glass section we talked about, but also just when you're walking around trying to get to the the elevator thingy. I got absolutely bodied by a zombie holding a gas tank. I just remember getting one thrown at me and just falling and instantly dying, which was annoying, but also kind of funny. And then the stuff with the mortar was really cool. Even the gas station was tiresome. I died a few times to that, but the chainsaw versus chainsaw fight, I think I was popping off in my room, just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is some Devil May Cry level nonsense. But yeah, the pacing, especially in that first area, was brutal, and that's a part that I'm not looking forward to replaying on subsequent playthroughs.
Yeah, I do.
I'm glad
agree.
that I'll let you go.
No, I was just gonna say I do agree. I definitely have some choice words, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Dante.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I'm glad that it seems to be the general consensus of that section, in that it just felt like a complete slog. And one of the things that really really sucked about it is just that the going back to the remains of Raccoon City, cool setup. Actually going through the city and just being met with gray, desolated buildings on top of gray, desolated buildings over and over again with not very much to distinguish the others. Not as good in practice, and I'm glad that there was a map feature and I was able to see where I still had items left over and where, there wasn't, because if I didn't, I would have gotten lost a whole lot more. And that's to say I still got lost every now and then, just kind of going, well, wait, how do I get back to the BSAA camp that they have there? Oh geez, am I taking the wrong stairs? Do I have to go up this ladder? No, I gotta go down. And it was just not the best execution.
No, yeah, and I really agree with your point about kind of everything looking the same-ish, and I've thought about this a lot because I'm like, man, I don't know if I just had a different idea of how Raccoon City was gonna look, right? Because I mean, it's supposed to be a missile, like, destroyed parts of the city. It's abandoned. Yeah, I get that. Like, there's not gonna be wildlife growing or anything. It's completely destroyed, whatever. But I definitely feel like there could have been some things that were designed a little better. It really did feel like you were just kind of running through one like same looking corridor. I think there are bright spots there. I really enjoyed going through recognizable areas that I went through previously. It's in Raccoon City. That first section with the detonator. Really not a fan. I don't understand. I understand, but I don't understand the need for that. I will say, I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I was not expecting the zombies to pop up when they did in that room. Like the way that they did, and they're looking all so old, like they've just been sitting there forever. I thought was really interesting. But I was like, oh man, I heard the crunching, and I was like, oh god, here we go. But Raccoon City as a whole is my least favorite area of the game, and I hate saying that. Because I do think it has some bright spots, past the first half. The BSAA camp was an interesting addition. You kind of use that as a hub and level up Leon's stuff there. And then you, of course, get access to the motorcycle, which I have definitely opinions of that. I definitely think that sequence could have been 10 times cooler than what it was. But it was still cool for what it was. I will say, though, my favorite part of Raccoon City, talking about your comment earlier, Dante, about regret. My favorite part of this entire section of the game is the moment walking into RPD and what I really appreciate that Capcom did is, there were a few zombies in RPD, but it was very quiet. It was quiet, it was calm, and it was a moment of reflection for Leon. And I really appreciated that, walking through the halls and just kind of silently exploring, this place, and, having been through the whole thing and, oh God, I got to go get the jack to lift up the door and stuff like that. It felt like returning to a memory in a way. And I really appreciated the kind of solemn nature of it. Sure, we had the zombie by the vending machine. Tofu made a appearance. Shout out Tofu. Some really fun Easter eggs here and there that I really appreciated. But I think by far, that was my favorite section of the game. It really felt like it paid so much tribute to the first two games especially. And I really, really appreciated that out of everything out of Raccoon City. I even saw like a video that someone posted online, and I was like, oh man, the gate to RPD that Leon locked in the second game, he unlocks it here 30 years later. Like it's just really cool, and it feels untouched by time when you walk in.
Yeah, the RPD. Oh,
no, I was just gonna say it's a really good balance of subtlety and fan service. The basic stuff, right? Obviously, there was gonna be a reference to the Welcome Leon sign, but the way they did it was really well done, and there were a lot more overt instances of fan service. Mr. X comes back, which I thought was really fun. I remember just seeing him appear and being like, "Oh, great! This is terrifying. Not him again." But that was a really cool sequence, and even narratively, it's again like the one of my favorite underrated spots that I completely missed on my first playthrough was the story of Marvin's daughter. I'm curious, did you guys find that?
I don't think I did.
I think only in the deluxe edition, which is kind of a bummer. Um, there are notes scattered throughout Raccoon City Police Department about a girl named Meryl. Um, and, she's with her mom trying to surprise her dad at work. But then, she starts to witness the zombie breakout and is helpless to stop it. And I think the second to last note is, "Hey, my name is Meryl Branagh." Implying, saying that she is Marvin's daughter. The last thing we see is an empty note that is unwritten with her shoes right next to it, implying that she didn't make it. Whether she was nuked or turned into a zombie is really unfortunate either way. It was a really devastating choice. But yeah, I think that balance of terror and fan service was really well done. Um, I'm curious though, kind of focusing a little bit more on narrative. We've already talked about Victor Gideon. What did you guys think of Zeno?
Wesker Light, you mean?
Yeah,
Team you,
Zalbert
Wesker.
Zesker. Yeah,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I thought that he was fun. He definitely fulfills that void that Wesker filled for the series. It does kind of I guess feel a little bit iffy to me that we're kind of retreading Wesker again. Granted, he's a separate character, and I'm sure there's going to be other ways that they'll find to distinguish him. But when we first see him, and all throughout the game, just all the little details that we see, it is just, oh, that's just Wesker, And it's like, well, we could try something new later on, but for what it is, Wesker's fun. It's not going to be too big of an issue. I won't complain too much, but, I'll kind of sit there and harumph a little bit. What'd you guys think about him?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I was really not a fan of Xeno. I kind of scratched my head. Like, I understood. It feels like the reason that Xeno was added in was solely for, the connections. And I think even with Gideon, I thought that the first half of the game set up Gideon so well. And then the kind of motorcycle scene happens and he just kind of disappears. They bring in Xeno. And I feel like I wish that there was a little more time with Gideon to build up to the end of the game. Xeno had, I think, 9 minutes of screen time and was just kind of gone. That was kind of the game. I will say that's kind of the part of the game for me that I kind of rolled my eyes a bit of like, all right, guys, like this is a little dumb fan service addition here. Like, did we really need to bring back Wesker for nothing, basically? But it's not ruining the narrative or any means. I understand that it's more so for the grand picture of the connections, the ties to the government, etc. But I will say it was definitely a choice. It was definitely a choice.
yeah. Zeno is a weird case for me because I liked him in theory, but not so much in execution. Barring the fact that he's basically just Temu Wesker, I genuinely thought that he was Wesker when we first met him, which that would have been insane. But I didn't like the role he played, especially in Raccoon City. Right? It would have been one thing if he's constantly getting in Leon's way as a threat, but he wasn't. Right? I mean, he was just kind of dragging Grace along, and I really did not like the role Grace played in Raccoon City. I think she needed a proper section. She should have been the one looking through the orphanage in the present day. We did get that brief instance with the young clone of Grace, which we find out that Emily was also a clone of Grace, which was cool, but I think Grace needed her own section where she explores a part of Raccoon City. I would have loved if while Leon explores RPD and the city itself, maybe Grace is in the Arclay Mansion or something, re-exploring that area, and kind of revisiting that section from the past. I think that would have been so cool. But the other thing is that Resident Evil 9's approach to fan service is kind of strange because they will reference Tofu, Wesker, and as we'll find out later, Hunk as well. But they're allergic to mentioning Ada, Claire, Jill, even at, like, someone as basic as Ashley would have been a fun nod of, like, Leon looking at Grace and being reminded of Sherry and Ashley, especially since Sherry does play a role in the story. It would have been so easy for Sherry to be like, oh man, I remember when Claire protected me here. was really weird. I wasn't really sure why they did that.
Hey, but you know Captain Redfield's got to show up at the end. Come on,
Yep,
every
good
game.
old and the Wolf Squad, the one everyone we wanted to
No,
see.
I will say I think there's a line for this. Like I know a lot of people online have been really complaining about certain characters not being in here. I definitely really would have liked to see Ada for sure, considering her ties to Leon. But especially like for me, going into the parking garage, right? And going and you literally find the charm in there. That's the keychain that Ada gives Leon in RE4. And I was like, oh man, like I would have killed to see something here to tie into Ada. I don't think it hurt the game, but it definitely, I feel like, and there's a line, you don't want to have like all these characters coming back. I think out of everyone, Ada would have been cool to have returned, even just for a moment, just considering it was Raccoon City. But I know at least there's a lot of people online that are pretty upset. It is interesting though, like considering the origin of like the fact that the Raccoon City curse is like T virus, that like we don't really hear about any of the other survivors having any effects from it. And it is interesting at least that Jill or Claire or Ada, we don't hear anything about them having any effects from it. But I do think at least in Claire's case, Claire has Code Veronica remake coming out next year. That's going to be like her game. I understand Capcom kind of wanting to hold off on bringing her in this one because that's going to be her focus then, at least from the company's perspective. But I definitely think at least, it was a little disappointing that we didn't get anything really, not even a mention of these characters besides a couple charms here and there.
But hey, Leon has a ring, which we see in the final shot. Who's the lucky lady? I've seen all sorts of interpretations, including some really weird ones that are kind of alarming. Like Sherry, of all people. Like, Jesus, guys. But yeah, it was a weird choice, but it's not one that I was broken up about. I think it would have been nice to have a mention, as you said, especially considering it's the Raccoon City curse. But yeah, I hope, the DLC will address that. I'm curious, Dante, what were your thoughts on this whole aversion to mentioning some of these characters? No Carlos mention, man. Oh, man. What a bummer. Carlos was the one character we wanted to see.
I was holding out so much hope that Claire would show up at some point because it feels so fitting.
It does
within the game. It feels like it would just make sense, especially with all the parallels to Resident Evil 2, and it would have been such a great full circle moment that not only does Leon get to go back to Raccoon City, but Claire does as well, and they finally get to sort of cross that bridge and cope with that sort of trauma of going through that situation together. But no, she didn't show up at all. There was the one charm of her that you can get and attached to your gun, and that was it. And I totally agree. It feels like there is a aversion that Capcom has with bringing up these characters, and I don't know if it's just because they're afraid of sort of having to set up context or explain where these characters were, or it's just they see it as it's too much effort to try and kind of drum a pipe for them when you have characters like Leon and Chris that are so recognizable, and as soon as anybody sees them, it's like, yeah, Chris Redfield, whoa, But I'm holding out hope that something will come from a DLC pack. Either Ada will show up or Claire will show up, and they'll be the focus of it, because it would just lead to a lot of very, very interesting storytelling, not only about how they feel about what happens with Leon and what the whole T-virus infection is, but also just to see how they deal with that passage of time as well, just to see how they've grown up.
Agreed. No, I definitely was hoping for Claire. I that's kind of how I'm coping with it. That like, oh, they just didn't want to add her for Code Veronica remake. But it's like, I was telling a friend of mine, I honestly feel like if Capcom did not want to do Grace, or even if they kept Grace, like Claire could have easily filled the position of Leon or joined alongside him. Like this was so the moment for her to join, and she just didn't. And it's like, man, man.
Well, especially because I think I think Claire works at a doesn't she work with like an NGO that is focused on like pharmaceutical research or like anti-bioterrorism stuff as well?
Yeah, she works with the what's it called, TerraSave.
Yeah, TerraSave, yeah. So like it would have fit in with the story there as well. It just feels like such a missed opportunity.
It really does. And I mean, we haven't, I get it. Like I said, sure, we're going to see Claire here soon, hopefully. But like, Claire has not shown up in so long. Like, she has not been in a game since RE2. I mean, it's like yeah, I mean, sure, Revelations, right? But like, we have not seen her since 2019. Sure, I'm not counting Death Island, but like, it's just crazy to me that we just get a little charm, and it's like amazing. Here you guys go, Claire Redfield, whoop whoop. Oh my god, I just wanted more. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to why and the decisions behind it. I kind of do agree. Like there has to be some kind of aversion. I don't know if it's a hey, we really want new players to be able to experience this without past context. I don't agree with that, but I don't really know. It felt like that Capcom went so heavy in strange directions with the fan service, but they couldn't bring it like how are we gonna bring back a Wesker clone, but we're not gonna bring back Ada or Claire? Like I don't understand that at all. But hey, that's okay. I will say, moving through Raccoon City, that final area of the arc, and this is the final area. I really love the design of the arc. I was kind of hesitant after going through Raccoon City. You defeat those giant mutated plants walking up to the arc in that door, and seeing the Umbrella logo, I was like, oh man. And I was honestly pretty nervous because at that point I was let down by Raccoon City, and I was not exactly sure what to expect. But Capcom just does it every time with these Umbrella facilities and labs. I mean, just impeccably designed. What were they doing there? Who knows? Who cares? This thing was just beautifully designed. I loved just the futuristic look and feel of it. Exploring it as both Grace and Leon was awesome. And to dive in a little bit, just briefly before pass it to y'all, I really do. My favorite aspect of this area in terms of what happens is really when Grace and Leon are interacting. And you could just tell, like, when Grace is talking to Leon, Leon sees himself in Grace from the himself that was in Raccoon City in 1998. And it's just a full circle moment to the very end of the game where he literally finally breaks through the cycle of being able to save someone and feel, relinquished of his responsibility for what happened in the incident. And I think that this overall was a beautiful character arc. I really do love how Capcom handled it. I also love the idea that, Grace was literally just this normal human that Wesker had that wasn't, she wasn't cloned. It was just that she was born and given to Alyssa, and it was kind of a twist that I wasn't expecting, and I really appreciated it. I definitely have choice thoughts on how Wesker's character was handled, and I'm so sorry, Spencer's character was handled. But I really did find a lot of the overall narrative conclusions very satisfying, and also am very interested, we'll talk about in a minute, but the future implications of what happened here. Dante, what were your kind of major takeaways? Did you like the arc? What did you think of the story? Stuff like that.
I did end up liking the arc. I thought it was after sort of again, it sucks to say, but the relative low point that is Raccoon City pre going to the RPD, going to the arc felt like a nice boost up in terms of just, like you said, it was just a classic Umbrella facility, and it feels so good to return to another one of them. And seeing just all the different implications of what the arc is as a concept is absolutely insane in terms of just the lore and the canon as a whole. One of my favorite points of the game, one of my favorite moments was when I'm not sure if I think it says Leon, but you walk through one of the doors in the arc, and then you're immediately faced with tubes, like sleeping pods. Yep. And inside them are liquors. And just the pause that you had to like I made of just going like, what the like what the heck is going to be going on in here? Like what is happening? Having to fight them later on, like again, another really good like fitting use of fan service, but that go later on finding that computer that just shows that Umbrella, or I think it's mostly the connections at that point, is mass producing these monsters, and they're selling them for millions upon millions of dollars, all the way up to the point where you can order a tyrant, a Mr. X tyrant, or a nemesis for however much money that you have available on you. And just the fact of that these monsters could be roaming around anywhere around the world, and the connections can pull them out at any time for whatever sort of use that they want is absolutely insane. But I as you were saying with Leon's characterization, there were a lot of really, really nice moments that I found throughout the game, and especially my favorite moment is after you make the choice of whether you want to release Elpis or not, and if you do release it, there's a part where Gideon's, of course, he comes back and he puts a self-destruct on the facility, because these facilities can't exist. They always have to be destroyed at the end of the day. And Leon and Grace feel like they are not going to be able to get out. There's no way to get out. And Grace sits down, and Leon just goes up beside her and says, if you're waiting here, I will wait here with you. That just proves that, as gruff and as sort of machismo as Leon wants to put off, he still has the heart and just the consideration of just a very, very gentle man. And that was just one of my favorite moments of just characterization that we've seen in the series as a whole, in my view. But Saras, what do you think about Ark and sort of the characterization as well?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, just starting with the gameplay stuff, I thought it was really fun. I liked that first section with Leon where, you fight against those umbrella soldiers, which was a cool, very John Wick-esque sequence, which I really enjoyed. Really found that Hunk fight, even though he's called, quote, the commander, it's Hunk. Like, let's be honest.
It's definitely Hunk.
Yeah, it's definitely Hunk. Presumably he's dead, but his body is missing if you do go back. Could have despawned, but I'm not so sure. That was a cool fight. Very reminded me a lot of Krauser from Resident Evil 4 remake, which, hey, that's never a bad thing. And then of course that liquor encounter, both as Leon and as Grace. I think somehow either me or one of the enemies shot the tube. So at one point I'm just like panicking, trying to outrun the riot shield guys, and at one point Leon says, a liquor, and I think I just screamed out like oh, a what? What do you mean a liquor? Why is a liquor here? And then of course with Grace you get to see that whole sequence even more, which was very terrifying. I'm glad we got that one last balance between Leon and Grace. That was really fun. Again, that balance was one of my favorite parts of the game, and I wish we had more of it. But narratively, I was pretty happy with the way things wrapped up. There was an argument to be made that it wraps up very, like, a little too neatly, especially if you go and decide to release Elpis. The fact that there was even a bad ending at all was interesting. I'm not really sure why Capcom decided to add that in. But that was, like, obviously Emily could be saved because of Elpis's ability to be an antiviral. And there's an argument to be like, oh, come on, it's like a Deus Ex Machina. How convenient that the one thing that Elpis was a cure. But I think there's a little bit more to it, because as Victor kind of states, the fact that there's an antiviral now in play changes all the rules of Resident Evil. Because not only can it undo powers and, could completely wipe out a tyrant or fix a T-virus cure or a disease, this is the first time in the entire series where zombies could be cured, which could change the entire way the series is approached in future games, especially if they manage to mass produce it, which seems like the implication at the end of the game. So I was more than okay with that. As for the Spencer retcon, I was okay with it. I like that it's kind of left up to interpretation, because you could make the argument that Spencer really didn't want to be redeemed, or it's not a full redeeming, as Victor says. It's like he just gave them all chaos. Grace seems to think that Spencer wanted to make amends. Both are viable. Who knows? But I really liked how it all wrapped up. The Captain Redfield mention was kind of cheesy, especially that after credits, which was very weird. Like, that was a weird after credits. But I liked that final payoff with Grace and Emily. That was cute. And I'll be honest, I looked up to see which one was the bad ending, because the moment I got two choices, I'm like, I don't want to see Leon die in my first ending. That would be too mean. But yeah, I'm curious, Noah, what were your thoughts narratively on that last little bit? We talked a little bit about it, of course, with your aversions to the Spencer choice, but I want to hear more of your details.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can tell you with the ending, I really sat there for about like 5 minutes trying to figure out which one I was gonna do, and with I really thought back to like what Grace had said about Elpis and stuff, and I just made the gut call to release it, and I was like, dude, everyone's so dead, and I'm glad to have been wrong, but I did go back and obviously watch the bad ending. Capcom had to include Leon dying somehow in this game just to say they did it. It is what it is. But narratively, I am pretty happy with the end of the game. My big complaints is just it is definitely the Spencer stuff is just interesting. I still really don't know how to feel about it. It feels out of character in some instances, and I think yes, you can make the argument. His egotistical side, he made this decision to make Elpis solely because if Umbrella was gonna do this, like if someone got bigger than him, like he was gonna wipe it all out, maybe. But I don't know. After RE5 and the ending of that game, or I'm sorry, the beginning of that game, and all the DLC with the Wesker and Spencer conversations, and just what we know about Spencer from the series, I'm still not necessarily sure how I feel about it. But I will say, out of everything in the arc and just this game in general, something I meant to call out earlier that I really want to call out, and it's especially true in this area, is I love how much effort and detail was put into how the game looks. I feel like too often Resident Evil games, while beautifully, very good graphics, beautiful games, a lot of the times they stick to the same color schemes and palettes. And I feel like there was so much change here, even in Arc, right? Like that room as you walk up to Leon leaning against the door with the yellow hues coming from the glass, like just the details like that really elevated these environments for me. I was a fan of how the game ended. I was not a fan of the final boss fight. I think that was cheesy fan service just to bring back Nemesis virus and just have it be the same exact thing. And I mean, it's like, I see people talk about this stuff and I do agree with it. Like, there was so much, Gideon's rings and just hints of him being a snake. Like, he could have been a snake tyrant boss fight or something, or just something different. And I just wish we would have gotten something a little different for him. I don't think the boss fight was bad. It just wasn't anything that like really had me excited. I saw the Nemesis virus and I was like, oh man, like you're joking. Hand grenade, blow up the things, pew pew, hand grenade. It's like, oh man, like I was hoping for something a little different. But I'm not upset with the way Requiem ended out. I mean, my overall impressions is I think this is a very good game. Was it the excellent masterpiece of a game that I was hoping for whenever this got announced? No, but I think it was a very, very fun game, and it's a very good game. And I will say, I'm very excited for the DLC and to see kind of what happens with that.
Agreed. I mean, there are so many things they could do. I've heard some theories that it'll be all about what Leon was doing in RE7 and RE8. It could be an Ada DLC, it could be a Jill DLC, like just DLCs focusing on the other Raccoon City survivors. Possibilities are limited, like unlimited, but I want to ask you both, where do you think Resident Evil 10 will go? Because there's a little, like, maybe some hints at the end. Obviously, the game kind of teases the next projects. There are, little nods to Code Veronica. I think one of the wine bottles in the Rhodes Care Center is, Veronica, the word scrambled, and of course in the orphanage there is a C block, and then there is a one's playset that's a mansion and four figures walking in, and another playset that's a train, obviously referring to not just Code Veronica, but also remakes for Resident Evil 1 and 0. But I want to look at RE10, because there's a lot of things they could do with RE10. I have my own theories, but I want to hear what you both think.
Well, definitely, I think that it's definitely going to be the connections related. We've got to do something about it. We've been hearing so much about them, and there has to be some sort of development of them and payoff, because as far as what we know now, there's still just a shadowy organization that has connections to pharmaceutical companies and bioterrorism. That's just their thing. So I I think that the beginning of the next game, honestly, just as a set piece, will involve something to do with Mia, just because as far as we know, she's the only person that we have had like any deep interaction with that we know has had contact with connections in some form or way, just with what her having to protect Evelyn, and whether she's leading on more than she knows, or whether there is more to her and she's trying to still hide stuff behind her true intentions or personality. I think Mia will have something to do with it, but regardless of whether it's an action or a continuation on this more horror-based path that Resident Evil seems to be going on, we'll just have to see when it comes out or when we get first gameplay looks of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I definitely agree. I think Mia has to be a part of it. I will say, after the Chris Redfield of the last three games, I'm pretty feeling like this is going to be a Chris game. Maybe it's time Chris and Jill reunite and we have Chris and Jill be for 10. I don't know. But I definitely think that Chris Redfield is going to be involved. I will say with Requiem, at least from all the marketing and the direction that Capcom gave about, tying this is the end of the saga, I think I might have not misinterpreted, but had the wrong idea of what that meant. From my perspective, I kind of was taking that as, we're wrapping up what we've built of Resident Evil and moving forward. And I kind of took that as characters too. But after beating Requiem, that's clearly not the case. It really does feel like to me that instead that was really targeted at Umbrella, and we're moving on beyond Umbrella. And now the true villain of the modern times is the connections, and really figuring out the corruption within the government and these companies and stuff like that, I think is what's next. But I definitely agree. I think Mia has to be a part of it, tying in 7 and 8. I wouldn't be surprised to see Grace return in the future, though, like I said previously, I do think that her character arc wrapped up and is absolutely complete. But I am feeling, if anyone, I am feeling that this is a Chris Redfield game. I really do.
Yeah, I think RE10 is going to be about getting the band back together, so to speak. I feel like we're going to get Chris, we're going to get Jill, Claire, maybe Rebecca and Mia, and hopefully Grace. I think this is going to be kind of a horror Avengers, so to speak. Obviously not as over the top, but I feel like they're going to all team up against the connections. I hope they don't make it co-op. I know there were early concepts that RE Requiem was going to be co-op, multiplayer, or whatever, and I'm so glad it wasn't. Capcom needs to stop trying to push that, because they keep doing it. It's never going to work, and they need to stop. But I could totally see 10 being like this ultimate reunion of these survivors and building up these characters. We're going to see Leon again, we're going to see Chris again, and Jill and Ada and all these characters in the same place. Like, it's going to feel like one of the CG films brought to life, but way less schlocky, which I'm more than okay with, right? I think that is something that has been long overdue. Ever since RE7, they've been kind of tiptoeing around all these different concepts and returns for these characters. So having a story all about Chris and Jill feels like a no-brainer.
Yeah, definitely with, because we're, after this, we're going to be going up to the 10th installment of this series in like 10 feels like such a big number. It feels like you have to do something big. So honestly, after hearing it, yeah, it feels like they would be kind of setting things up to have a grand reunion of all these characters and doing something regarding them, even just as like an anniversary title as well, because it seems to be when these mainline titles seem to line up of when they get released. There's usually around major anniversaries for the series. But it's going to be interesting to see how they continue past 10, and I might be thinking a little bit too far into the future, but if 10 ends up being sort of a grand return of everybody and we end up finding out stuff about the connections, it has to get around to the point where we look at these characters, and especially with how old they're getting, and going, well, we need to kind of ring in the new generation. So we might get returns of people like Grace or even Rose in the future as well. But it'll be interesting to see sort of how we get the new Avengers of Resident Evil in the future.
No, agreed. And I do think, even if Chris comes back, if Jill comes back, there's definitely going to have to be some new characters introduced. I think Rose is someone who will definitely play a part in the future of the franchise, especially after the DLC and that setup. It feels like it's kind of just a thread waiting for the, year of the series to catch up to it, I guess. But I'm very excited to kind of see what the future holds for Resident Evil. Requiem was a really fun time. I think we all can agree it was a really great experience overall, despite some of the shortcomings we have with it. But overall, guys, that's going to do it for our debut episode of Recollection of Evil. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to head down to the comments. Let us know your thoughts on Requiem and if there's anything you want us to tackle in this Resident Evil series. But with that being said, we'll catch you next time.